So yesterday we spent some time looking at notice and note strategies for nonfiction text. And if you recall, we looked at simply highlighting a text when it's a virtual document or a digital document. When we are using a paper copy or a printed copy, we would use highlighters, or we could use our pencil and just use the key to help us with our notice and note strategies. Today, I'm going to take a little bit further for you, and we're going to talk about something called annotation. And I'm sure you've annotated text with your English classes and your English assignments. But I want to make sure that we're annotating nonfiction text because it's a little different. So simply put, an annotation is just you engaging with your text, you becoming part of that learning process. An annotation allows you to remember or retain information that you've read. If you're anything like me, you may have read something and you've made all the way down to the bottom of the paper, and then afterwards you think, what did I just read? And you don't remember. So annotations help you remember and retain that information that you read on a piece of paper. Annotations could be anything like highlighting or circling. It could be underlining. It could be writing or adding notes into the margins. Anything like that is considered an annotation. But ultimately, an annotation is something to help you remember the information that you've read. So how do I annotate a text? Well, first, it's important for you to understand there's no right or wrong answer for this. Yes, I want you to use those notice and note nonfiction signposts, but as far as annotations are concerned, you have to develop a routine and a way that works for you. So here are some suggestions for you, but you have to figure out what works best for you. So some ideas that include for annotations would be underlining the main idea of each section. So as you're making your way through a nonfiction text, you first want to figure out, why am I even reading this? What's the purpose of this? You want to figure out that main idea. So underlining it is always a good idea. You can also highlight any objectives or end of chapter summary notes. So if you know that we have an objective that's posted and we need to look at answering that objective, you might want to find within the text that evidence and circle and highlight it to help you summarize that. Another example would be just using symbols or your own color coding that works for you. I personally am a big fan of underlining and circling. I use symbols a lot too. Sometimes if I've read something and it doesn't quite make sense, I add a question mark, and that lets me know, hey, this is a little confusing, or maybe the author is saying something that's not really well supported. I also use exclamation points because that helps me to recognize that there's something in this section that is a glaring error, or I disagree with it, or we've learned something that maybe contradicts that. So in addition to that notice and note signpost strategy of contrast and contradictions, I like to use for annotations exclamation points as well when there's contradictions. When I notice something that's really, really important, I like to use an asterisk or like a star. Sometimes that helps me say, yeah, this is really important. I need to revisit this information. Also, I like arrows a whole lot. That helps me make connections. Sometimes I will find something and it's in one paragraph and it's repeated again in another paragraph. So I use arrows that helps me with that as well. But you will eventually find your own system that works. What I want us to get in the habit of is working with our text. As we're reading it, I want us to get in the habit of not just reading to read to get done, but reading and engaging with our text. So we need to take some time and annotate it. So just as a reminder, you're still going to continue to use these highlighting features on a digital text, but we're going to take it a step further. So not just highlighting the text, now we're going to add those written pieces that's going to help us remember what we've read. It's going to help us remember and maintain and retain that information. So I have a short example here that I wanted to share with you. And this is how I would annotate a text. So this is actually the first couple paragraphs of your assignment today. So I'm going to do some of the work for you, but I would like to see you take this example and then finish your annotations for the rest of the article. So we're going to read a little bit more about Jamestown today. It's called The New World, Jamestown and the Starving Time. Okay, so I want to make sure that you know that there's a really cool feature, which is your markup feature with your iPad. That's what we're going to use for today. You can use anything that makes sense for you. If you like to use Google Docs and you want to add comments, that way, that's totally fine. Whatever you want to do, but you must add some annotations. So I'm just simply going to show you how I'm going to use the markup feature today to read this article. So again, the article is called The New World, Jamestown and the Starving Time. So the first thing I want to do is start reading it, obviously, right? And I want to make sure I'm considering those notice and note signposts. So contrasts and contradictions, word gaps, if I see numbers or statistics, if I see things that are quoted, or if I see extreme language. I want to make sure that I'm highlighting accordingly. So the first thing I'm going to do is take a screenshot of this slide. Okay, and now I'm going to work into my markup feature, which is right in my iPad. So we have highlighters, which is really nice. We have pens and all kinds of things. So let's start reading. The first joint stock company to launch a lasting venture to the New World was the Virginia Company of London. Well, right away, there's a term that I'm not familiar with, and that's a joint stock company. So that's a word gap. I'm going to highlight that blue. Okay. The investors had one goal in mind, gold. That's something we've learned a lot about. I'm going to circle that. I think that's pretty important. And I'm going to draw some money signs there, okay? Because that is activating some prior knowledge that we've learned about explorers and exploration, and that was the 3 Gs. They had hoped to repeat the success of Spanish settlers who found gold in South America and brought it back to the Spanish Empire. Well, that's a motive there. So I'm just going to simply write down that their motive is to be like the Spanish settlers. And again, I'm writing that down. I'm drawing an arrow, and I'm going to continue reading. Britain's King James I had granted the Virginia Company a private charter. That's a new term for me again. It's a word gap. So I'm going to highlight that blue, private charter. Continue reading. Giving the company permission to set up a colony in the New World. Individuals invested in the Virginia Company to help fund the trip and the settlement. They had hoped to receive a huge profit in return. Guess what? That's something else that's important. I'm seeing that as a main idea. I'm going to put an asterisk there. They want to see a huge profit. So again, we're talking about money. So 144 Englishmen and boys sailed across the Atlantic Ocean. In 1607, they established Jamestown Colony and named it after King James. I see 2 numbers in there. I want to make sure that I highlight those, the appropriate colors. Those are red because those are stats or numbers. So we have 144 people. Oop, go back. Make sure we have the right color. Red, 144 English men and boys, and 1607. And I'm actually going to do something else with this. So I'm remembering what we've learned about Roanoke, that to have just boys and men probably is not a good idea. So I'm just going to make a note of that and kind of draw a question mark. Okay, just boys, just men, why? Why aren't there women? If this is a colony, we said that we wanted to colonize. So that doesn't kind of make sense to me. So I'm going to continue reading. The colonists were told that if they did not generate any wealth, financial support for their efforts would end. Many of them spent their days vainly searching for gold. So I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to make some predictions here. So if they're only searching for gold, what does that mean for survival? So what could happen? Okay, so we're going to stop there. As you can see, this is not pretty. It doesn't look really great. I can definitely read my own handwriting. Markup feature also has a text box option. If you click on there, you could add your text. I'm just a big fan of just writing it myself, but that's up to you. So again, what I'd like for you to do is to continue this process today. Okay, I'm going to save it to my photos. And going back here. So just to reiterate, folks, what we are really looking at is working with a text. So going back, the whole point is to activate our knowledge and retain that information of our text. So today you will have an assignment where you will continue annotating as well as using those signposts to annotate your text. If you have questions, you know how to get a hold of me.